Living forever might seem like a blessing, but it can turn out to be a curse in the long run. And one of the biggest drawbacks of an eternally extended lifeline is watching your loved ones die over the years. It is no different for Deadpool, who finds out that everlasting life comes with its share of side effects when even his goofy jokes cannot cover up his pain of losing his daughter. Yes, we're talking about Marvel's take on the end of Deadpool's story arc in a future universe narrative titled Deadpool: The End. In this video, we'll take you through a detailed rundown of the comics that gives us the near-perfect ending to Deadpool's story. Before we go into explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Everything that happens in Deadpool: The End. What is the premise of the story? The End storyline has been used by Marvel Comics to answer the major question that fans have regarding some of the most popular characters. What is the potential fate of these superheroes and villains? This particular line of comic books are not really an actual ending of the narrative of the characters, and they are simply a fantasy-filled what-if journey that allow the fans to enjoy some harmless fun. As for Deadpool: The End, we get to witness the scenario where Deadpool nears his final act in a futuristic timeline. And the story is as interesting as it gets. The narrative opens with an image of the vastness of space as strange creatures swarm around. It is called the end of the world, the final conclusion to every decision ever made and the consequences of every action. The vagueness of the philosophical first image is quickly past us as we come across a bizarre scene. Deadpool stands with his blades drawn in front of a kneeling Death, and the latter is clearly in bad shape with some kind of liquid spilling out of her skeletal mouth. As Death struggles to ask the reason behind Deadpool's attack, he simply springs into his typical carefree attitude. Death tells him that life wouldn't have a meaning without her presence, but Deadpool simply laughs it off by suggesting that it might be time to point her fingers at herself. He prepares for a fatal final blow with his sword, but a voice stops him in his action as an armored version of Deadpool appears before him. This armored Deadpool, who reminds us of Power Rangers characters, comes through a beam of cosmic light, and he criticizes Deadpool for talking about decorum after all his irresponsible actions over the years. As you would expect from Deadpool, he cracks a joke by exclaiming how the mighty have fallen, but it turns out to be misplaced humor as the armored figure lands a powerful blow on our favorite anti-hero. It pushes him back, but Deadpool is not one to be held down, and he unleashes his powerful demon-killing gun on the mysterious armored fellow. It turns out that the armored one is also no laughing matter, and he easily stops the powerful weapon with an energy shield. In case you didn't notice, during Deadpool's earlier interaction with Death, there were several other superheroes and characters around him, all of whom probably at the end of their universal journey. There was also a baby, Franklin Richards, playing with the Infinity Gauntlet, and now the Armored One asks him to snap the fingers of the gauntlet and utter the words, "back to normal." The baby obeys him, and the next course of events reveal a lot about the actual storyline. First, Deadpool and the Armored Deadpool engage in a fierce duel, where the former gets his limbs chopped off. Even with his broken energy shield, the Armored Deadpool desperately tries to save Death, and Deadpool is not pleased at all by this interruption to his plan. He screams out that he's only doing this for the Armored Deadpool, and the reply leaves us stunned as the real identity of the character is finally out in the open. It turns out to be Deadpool's daughter, and she answers back that contrary to what Deadpool thinks, he has been doing this solely for himself because he's not strong enough to watch his daughter die of old age. There's also an indication that he has done this before she finally steps out of her armor and pulls off her mask. Deadpool tries to mask his emotions briefly with humor, but he eventually breaks down and addresses his daughter, Ellie. He tells her about the tragic circumstances that have befallen him. In about 15 minutes, he would regrow his arms and continue with his life just like before, but his daughter would eventually die of old age, and he would have no one to call his own. Ellie understands his state of mind and tries to comfort the grieving father with a hug as he cries like a baby in her arms. He claims that he doesn't want to live in this stupid world without her, and his daughter nods in affirmation. She then pushes a button on her suit, and the armor reveals a bunch of neutrino bombs that are connected to a miniature black hole. The neutrinos should blow them to bits, and the black hole should swallow the entire explosion before collapsing on itself. Now, it seems like a pretty neat exit strategy, even for someone like Deadpool, doesn't it? If this works as planned, Deadpool wouldn't have to continue with a burden of life and he can meet his end with his beloved daughter. However, he still has his doubts and he asks Ellie if she is sure that there will be nothing left of him to regenerate from. She assures him of no loophole, as it is an emotional moment for the father-daughter duo as the two hug in what can potentially be their last embrace. What is his deal with Mephisto and how did he become the king of the underworld? Now that Deadpool is dead, the story doesn't end and we get a glimpse of his afterlife. Death is happy to see her lover and she tells him how eternity has now become more amusing with his presence. The two lean in for a kiss, but their adorable romantic moment is ruined by a screaming Mephisto who is seen chained to the nether regions of Fin Fang Foom. He seems to be extremely confused about how Deadpool could die and also gain control over his soul, although there was a curse that he would have to kill his daughter. We get further details when an amused Deadpool reads out from a contract about how there was a deal that as long as Deadpool doesn't kill his daughter Ellie, his soul will belong to Mephisto for all eternity. So how did Deadpool turn the tables on this twisted Lord of Hell? Deadpool explains how the whole thing was a clever setup and Ellie knew that if she did not kill him, he would go on to kill Death. This meant that Ellie was left with no other choice and Deadpool indirectly forced her to act the way she did. She may have been the gun, but Deadpool was the one to pull the trigger, and this is the loophole that allowed Deadpool to be the orchestrator of his daughter's death alongside its own. Even though she technically killed herself, the entire act was such that she had nothing else to do, which made it clearly Deadpool's doing in some way. Now that Mephisto is the least of his problems, we see Deadpool in a whole new avatar, and it is an image that you will remember for a very long time. He ascends the throne of the underworld and is clearly the unchallenged king, while Lady Death sits on his lap. He then proceeds to break the fourth wall and interacts with his readers one last time. He acknowledges and thanks them for all the love, but he also suggests that one ending is never going to be enough for him. He asks the readers who are completely delighted with this ending to stop reading, but the others can proceed to find out all the other dramatic and hilarious endings in the final bits of the story. Of course, we love how he becomes the Lord of the Underworld, but there is no way we would abandon a comic book without reading it till the very last word. Exploring every other possible ending that Deadpool wants his audience to choose from. Deadpool's satisfactory ending, where he dies alongside his daughter, might be a comfortable way to end his story, but he is the furthest from anything that is remotely comfortable. He is quick to introduce us to several other alternate endings, and each one of them has their way of amusing you. The happiest ending. Here, Wade Wilson can be seen busy in a pool party with plenty of pretty ladies all around him. The premise of this perfect little world for Wade comes from a tragic backdrop, where the world around him has been destroyed due to various factors such as wars and climate change. Wade somehow managed to create a force field around Miami to preserve it like you see in the pictures, and the pool party with the hot ladies is courtesy of his superhero prowess. In this particular ending for Deadpool, he spends his entire life partying and enjoying to the fullest, until his heart gives out in the year 2099. Even in death, he is buried under a bunch of naked, well-oiled humans, just like Deadpool would have wanted. The scariest ending. The scariest ending for Deadpool is premised in Phoenix, Arizona, and Deadpool appears to be an ordinary office worker. His manager walks in with a huge pile of files and drops them on his lap. He gives Deadpool a deadline till Monday, which means that his entire weekend is ruined. Moreover, the manager seems to be a grumbly, obnoxious fellow who even has problems with the way Deadpool has decorated his little cubicle. He even takes down one of Deadpool's favorite photos with his friends, and seems like this particular alternate ending has left no life for the twisted superhero. The good old Hollywood ending. After the disappointment of the saddest ending, we're greeted by a good old Hollywood ending where Deadpool sits in a fancy room. He puts on his boots while sitting on the bed, and he seems to have done the nasty with none other than the alluring Captain Marvel. In typical Deadpool style, he asks her if she thinks there are cameras in the room, and Captain Marvel replies that she hopes there are a few with all her heart. The two pull in for a kiss and Deadpool gets dressed before leaving out of the window. In a comical moment, he asks the Avengers to assemble, and it is implied that in this fantasy ending, Deadpool is the leader of the superhero team. Distinguished competition ending. The distinguished competition ending shows Deadpool on a rooftop along with a bunch of other superheroes like Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, and Spider-Man. It is a rainy night and Wade Wilson exclaims how hope is for the weak and there are no heroes. His deep and grim philosophical thoughts seem to have triggered everyone else, and Tony Stark can be seen drinking straight from a bottle. Hulk is lost in his thoughts and even Thor is contemplating his purpose in life. He exclaims that humanity is not worthy, and Spider-Man punches the wall in despair, suggesting that hope is for children and it is time to accept the world as the dark and disappointing place it is. Deadpool then removes his face mask and reveals the power cosmic. He snaps his fingers and the world disappears in a flash of light as he remarks how he has successfully rebooted Detective Comics. Ending of Domestic Bliss. Now this alternate ending of Deadpool looks hilarious because he's seen in his demon Deadpool avatar. He is sitting on a couch with one of his horns broken and his pot belly is peeking from his t-shirt. With his dad body, Deadpool turns out to be a partner of Lady Death, who asks him to prepare for a family event. He refuses the offer, but has the courtesy of completing her on her looks. She walks out and asks Demon Deadpool to not be jealous of her coffee meeting, which is with none other than Thanos, who happens to be in the neighborhood. Here we get to see Deadpool leading a typical married life, and it's fun to watch his moments with death in his ending. Bloodiest ending. This is probably the most violent and foul ending of all the alternate climaxes that Deadpool has laid out for himself. In this one, a pharmaceutical company stole Wade Wilson's DNA and has sent it to Ancestry.com. They mixed it with Logan's and now the two of them are sitting in a pile of genetically engineered inhuman offspring. Both Logan and Wade Wilson are badly injured and shot with arrows, and their regenerative abilities also seem non-functional at the moment. The bickering between Logan and Wade still continues as they sit there dying, and the chemistry between the two will remind you of the recently released Deadpool and Wolverine ending. Quietest ending. This is more of an apocalyptic ending where Deadpool can be seen witnessing a nuclear explosion wiping out the remaining parts of the world. He still has a smile on his face and a fancy eye goggles, and he somehow finds humor even in the brutal ending. This alternate ending captures the true carefree nature of Wade Wilson, and you cannot have it better than watching a nuclear meltdown of the world while enjoying cookies and wearing a floral green shirt. Another Hollywood ending. Clearly, Deadpool is obsessed with Hollywood, and he has imagined two alternate Hollywood endings for himself. This one is exactly the same as the last one, with the same setup where Deadpool sits on a bed and gets dressed. Only Captain Marvel is replaced with Bobby Drake, and even the conversation between the two is the same as before. It then goes on to assemble the Avengers and ends up offending Iceman by calling him a mutant. Deadpool's throwback ending. It cannot be a complete series of Deadpool endings without breaking the fourth wall. And in this particular ending, he takes it a step further. The story opens up with several government agents pointing their guns at Deadpool, who desperately tries to hide some comic book panels with his hands. He claims that these comic books are never supposed to see the light of day because of objectionable content. He pleads with the agents to let it go, but we don't get the exact outcome of this bizarre scenario. Endiest of endings. The premise of this ending is set in Avengers Tower, and Deadpool sits with his daughter Ellie, who is playing with a new snow globe. Blind Al is sitting across them at the table, and Deadpool wonders if every one of her favorite stories takes place inside the snow globe. Soon more of his friends start pouring in, and one thing leads to another as we end up with a violent gunfight. It turns out to be a chaotic mess, and everyone starts firing indiscriminately. Meanwhile, a monster with tentacles starts taking the people down one by one. Slowly, the scene is hidden behind bricks that are laid down one after another. It turns out that the whole thing was a dream for Wade Wilson, who is woken up by Vanessa. This proves to be another of the satisfactory endings for Deadpool, and we find comfort in the fact that he has ended up with the love of his life. Marvel's verdict: innovation rarely disappoints. There is a reason behind the insane popularity of Deadpool comics, and it is largely because of the innovative storylines that are covered and the unique writing that leaves the readers in splits. Deadpool the End follows a similar pattern, and it is the innovation that has left everyone swooning about the idea. But the audience through the whole experience of Deadpool's End is nothing short of brilliance, and there couldn't have been a more suitable ending for this quirky superhero. Not to mention, the alternate endings that we get to breeze through are a complete laugh riot. and the images of each one of these scenarios will stick with you for a very long time. Overall, this comic book narrative is definitely going to be worth your time and prove to be a solid read, and now might be a good time to revisit the same after the pleasant hangover of Deadpool and Wolverine. Do let us know in the comments below what you think about this bizarre climatic twist in Deadpool's life, and also tell us which other superhero endings you're keen to know more about from Marvel's The End series. If you like the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.